So do you think you have more officers making bad decisions, or you're just catching more of it?
I think it may be a combination of both. We have a risk management database called MASS, the Management Awareness System, and within it there are certain triggers that cause us to have interventions with officers, and those are not necessarily from a bad conduct standpoint, but it causes us as a leadership team to pay attention to things that otherwise, if we weren't tracking those behaviors, we wouldn't have a reason to intervene and talk to officers. In some instances, we've saved careers. We've intervened early, but what we are creating is a culture to where good officers don't want to work side by side with criminals. That's the bottom line. And you know, we have had officers who have said, you know, I can't work with an individual like this. This is the information that I'm privy to, and we research it, we vet it. We do our due diligence, and we found that these behaviors have been exhibited, and we've moved very swiftly to address them. So from that standpoint, I'm heartened by the number of officers who decide that we don't want our badge tarnished, because for the officer that goes on a police run and walks up to a home, that individual who is seeking assistance from the police department, they don't know that officer's name, they don't know who they are, they know that's a Detroit police officer. And every officer that disregards the ethos of this agency, it paints all of us with the same picture. So I'm very heartened at the fact that we have a number of officers in this department, the majority that do it right and want to see all of us do it right.
Now, some of these are actual criminal incidents.
Yes.
These are not officers that just had kind of a
Oh no,
bad day.
exactly.
And this is intentional stuff.
And for me, as the leader of this department, it's important to make the distinction between mistakes of the head and mistakes of the heart. A lot of officers, in what we do, we have to make some very, very, very difficult decisions, and make decisions in a split second that in some instances have an impact on life or death. So I don't want to create an environment where officers are afraid to do their job because they make a mistake. But when you get into theft, when you get into falsification of documents, when you get into protecting criminals and doing things of that nature, that's not a mistake of the head. That's not discharging your duties in good faith. That is not representing the Detroit Police Department. In those cases, we're going to go to the end of the earth to try and catch those officers, prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law, and make sure they don't have the honor of wearing a Detroit police badge anymore.
Have you seen some cases where you have a pretty darn good police officer that all of a sudden goes the other way?
Absolutely, and I think that's the importance of us having a good risk management system in place, an early warning system, because I think the most difficult thing for me as chief is to see someone who otherwise was a good performer, and due to maybe situations in their life that have spun out of control, and they didn't know how to reach out for the appropriate help and resorted to criminal behavior. Unexcusable, will not keep that officer around, but it hurts to see a good officer who maybe, if we had gotten in early, noticed some issues with alcohol, noticed issues with finances, picked up on some things and engaged an officer in a meaningful conversation to see what is it that is causing your performance to slip. That early warning, it helps the officer, it helps the police department, it helps the community, but in the instances where we can catch somebody before they get on that slippery slope, I think we have a moral obligation as a leadership team to do that.
And are you have someone in place, something in place where
we have
to
mechanisms in place
do?
to do that,
Okay.
yes. And that's a part and parcel resulting from the 2 federal consent judgments where we were required to develop a risk management database. Well, it is up, it is functioning, it is populated with data. There are performance indicators that when certain thresholds are met, it causes us to have an intervention. And it doesn't mean that the officer has done anything wrong, but the whole premise is to engage our officers. If it's good conduct, encourage them, let them know, please continue to do your work you're doing. If it's an officer that just does a tremendous job, but you start to see some slippage in performance, just a mechanism where there are ticklers in the system that say, Sergeant so-and-so, you need to address this officer, you need to address certain indicators, and then you need to develop a plan of action to deal with that. So within the construct of that system, we now have a tool that we didn't have in the past to manage an agency as large as our department.
So you could have counseling or whatever
You
was
can have
needed if they
counseling,
needed to?
you can refer somebody to EAP. There are a number of different, there may be some additional training that an officer may need relative to anger management. Life, this is a very stressful job. We put a lot of stressors on officers. What we consider ordinary is absolutely extraordinary to the average citizen, and especially in urban policing in a big city. It is magnified 10, 20 times, even more so than other officers in our field. So from that standpoint, we do have to have an understanding that stress that placed on the best officer, if not managed appropriately, in some instances can cause somebody to take a right or left turn that they ordinarily wouldn't take.
I know you're not ready to, haven't made any public announcements, but could you speak a little bit in general about the cooperation you're getting from the federal agencies?
I mean, with tremendous cooperation. Mayor Bing, under his leadership, has really empowered us as an agency to work with our federal partners from a public corruption standpoint. Sunshine is the best disinfectant, and to work collaboratively with your federal partners relative to some of the tools they have relative to financial instruments, working with the IRS. There are a number of ways now that we can vet through information that we receive to validate or not a claim against officer misconduct. So, I don't think we're ready to make the public announcement of the collaboration, which has been signed off on by a number of agency heads, including myself. But we are a working group and have been a working group for about 2 months now.